Are you aware that Caleb has been scammed?
It's seeming likely.
This part is going to be answering all the questions.
Anything I could do to help, I mean, you got to catch this guy.
The brutal exposing of what exactly happened and every single detail.
Yo, dude.
So what are you gonna do about Jake?
Jake responded, guys, and he didn't respond with a lawyer. He didn't respond by calling me. He has my phone number. He didn't respond by sending me an email. He has my email address. He didn't respond via snail mail like Ted K.
$599 US.
He responded by just posting on Twitter. What? To everyone coming from oompaville's video, please stop trying to dox me. Stop doing that, seriously. I will be making a formal statement and attempting to get in touch with Caleb directly. 1, I did not know I was being labeled a scammer. 2, there was a lot of important information missing from the video. 3, I did not receive or pocket $1 million, and every penny we received was put into the project. 4, I was under the impression my help was no longer needed after the source of the equipment was leaked to Caleb. 5, I did not receive any further correspondence from anyone after it was leaked 5-ish months ago. 6, I did not intentionally scam Caleb. I'll respond to all this. Don't worry, guys. It's shaking in my red Instagram boots. I worked with Chinese manufacturers directly to customize equipment because the cost to manufacture ourselves was too high. I received it and worked 1 year plus reverse engineering, redesigning controls, swapping cheap components with USA ones, etc. Caleb was told this was designed and built by us, which was a lie, though not initially. We did not receive $1 million, but a lesser amount, and didn't pocket any of it. It was put into the equipment. Purchased new controls to replace Chinese ones, redesigning electricals. I did not simply scam Caleb out of a huge sum of money. I provided him equipment he thought was 100% USA custom made, but wasn't. Then never finished the install and startup. That's good, but also, those are all lies, and I can prove it, and I will systematically throughout this video.
I've got documents. I have documents on all of you.
Also, go to sour.gg.
$599 US.
Her eyeballs were plucked out.
If you've seen part 1 of this entire thing, you know the details of how the company started. We imported candy from Europe and rebagged it in Texas, and we launched that, a co-manufactured product that was white labeled essentially. We sold that. It did very well. Now on to Jake. I first met Jake through my Twitch streams. At the time all this was starting, I streamed on a pretty consistent, regular basis, and he was an older person in my chat that appeared very knowledgeable and was interested in the things I was doing, specifically the candy project. People even sort of knew him in the community, in Discord and on Twitch. He gifted 50 subs on a few different occasions. So my community really liked him, and to me, he seemed like a good guy that was helping out when he didn't have to. After a stream in which Jake and I spoke about what Jake did outside of just watching my Twitch streams, he was an industrial automation engineer, something along those lines. I forget the exact terminology used. We added each other on Discord and talked about the candy because he was very interested in it. And Jake and I talked about how to make this thing a little bit bigger in the future potentially. But generally, our first talk was how to automate the bagging process, which was the most time-consuming thing. On March 28th, 2021, I received Jake's first cost analysis on what it would take to automate the bagging of the candy. Like I mentioned, not production, not manufacturing, just automate bagging. There was some speculation in the document, but overall it's extensive and very technical, and in my opinion, it appeared fully legitimate. Also, in my opinion, I believe that this is where the scam begins. The candy launches, it sells better than I imagined. I spent nearly $100,000 on the first launch. So over the next month, I do some plotting and scheming with my friend Jake. And on June 4th, 2021, I asked Jake, "Hello, sir. I wanted to ask if you guys could create the manufacturing equipment for the candy, not just the bagging." The idea was to be able to get past the limitations of having a co-manufacturer. I want to literally become him, dude. At this point, I wanted to become him. Willy Wonka. So Jake said, absolutely, dude. And he wanted to see what kind of candy that I wanted to make and what designs I wanted to be able to sell. I sent him the pictures of the rolls of candy, the sour strips that we were selling at that time. I was very excited. You can tell I'm an impassioned individual. From the launch until this point, I had contacted other engineers and other equipment manufacturers and retailers to figure out how to make this. Believe it or not, I couldn't find anything, especially nothing within my price range. I got multiple quotes for millions and millions millions of dollars, but I am just a single man with my mom as my, shipping candy to my followers. It wasn't gonna work. I wanted to find something that I could do and get the workforce to work for me. By that, I mean having it like automated and not having to have people fucking pack candy into bags with their hands. You can see Jake clearly makes the claim that he can handle the designing of everything we need with his company. So what is the next step? A contract, obviously. It's amazing how many of you in the first part just assumed that I didn't have a contract or just assumed that I didn't do any due diligence. I know I didn't include anything specific in the video, but I promise I did. I did all the research.
What's wrong with him?
Jake and I communicated very consistently for a good while, and all this time I was waiting on specifics on what it would take to make this thing, waiting for his, contract, more of what he could do for me or what we could do together. And I am at the same time exhausting my resources to try to make this entire thing a reality. I'm fortunate enough to know a good few business people who are successful in what they do. I called all of them and I got all of their opinions and all of their advice. I wrote it all down in a notebook and I created a game plan. During this era, Jake sent me the first whole process overview, another legitimate document. The only problem was that the first whole process overview utilized injection molding instead of extrusion. We'll circle back to that later as to why it's important. And the estimated cost of the total thing was between $250,000 and $550,000, less than the quotes that I had gotten before. Seemed reasonable. I asked Jake for the finalized proposal and I started talking to lenders, and this part was tough because my business was so young, I didn't qualify for much that was, worthwhile to take out as a loan, or the interest rates were really high. Just in general, the business was too young though. And using my other business, my YouTube business, as a personal guarantor, or myself as a personal guarantor, was difficult and complicated, and a lot of the lenders just scoffed at me. It became a massive struggle. And I was also doing my best to try and figure out how to make candy. I even spoke to a confectionery consultant that suggested we swap out the production method to the extruder model instead of the injection mold because it wouldn't work properly. And Jake said that was cool. Then Jake sends out the first updated proposal and mentions his team making a flight to Texas to come visit to see our little setup, what we're doing in our small 3,500 square foot warehouse. Huge relief here. I didn't expect to make this man fly across the country to come see my stuff because I had spoken to him. I felt very comfortable with him and working with him. So I didn't see it as being entirely necessary, but I know now in hindsight, I should have definitely had him come out to come see all the stuff and just see him in real life. Wait, actually that wouldn't have made any difference. Still couldn't get any loans in the meantime. Still couldn't get any loans. I'm in massive trouble, panic, anxiety. I asked Jake to lower the price if he could to cut whatever, wasn't necessary out of the contract. I also asked if he had any resources for lending and equipment loans because he builds equipment. Obviously, he would have some connections there, and he provided some. Pretty nice. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Beside that, Jake honored my request to lower the price a bit, and he created some revisions of the contract, cost-saving revisions. And as you can see, these seem sort of normal, but this one here in the top, alternative sourcing, has a major price impact. It didn't change it much. It lowered the price a little bit, but it still was $538,000 in the end. But this here, alternative sourcing. Oh, I must emphasize yet again how stressful this time was. I was uploading twice a day, one on my gaming channel, one on my main channel, and my channel was doing very poorly while I was posting. It was rough. It was very bad. And the hype for the first two flavors that we launched with Sour Boys sort of died down, and there wasn't much income to be made there. Mr. Zeldaron offered more help beside just lenders and offered some discounts if we signed a contract to take his bids first for future equipment if the business expanded. Of course, no brainer. Why would I work with anyone else? This guy's been kind to me. His contracts are legitimate. It's awesome. I also signed an NDA. By the way, NDAs do not protect you if you are trying to prevent the disclosure of fraud. I would consider myself to be good friends with Jake at this point. I felt that way. I'm not sure if he felt that way. I'm starting to think that he didn't. Maybe. I'm giving banks his info. He's talking to them. They're turning me down due to the age of my business. Just the same old story over and over and over again. The dude is providing me with support. He's helping me out as much as he can. A lot of failure in the middle of 2021. Jake comes to me with a solution, a bit of an offer with money or his rep and lender. This solution looked okay, but at the same time, I decided not to do it because it was a little hefty. I didn't like the down. It was scary to me. It was very scary. In spite of what you guys may think, I'm not a complete and total idiot. I did not take this deal as I thought it probably wouldn't bear well for me, or I wouldn't be able to honor the payments because I just didn't have that much money or make that much money. The point is, Jake was being reasonable, trying to help more than most people would. June 16th, 2021, the final contract comes in. It looks good. Get my lawyer to check it out. I sign it 2 days later. Boom. Jake plans to fly out to Tejas. Or maybe he didn't. I have no idea. I assumed he did. By the way, beautiful contract. Excellent contract. Very little up to the imagination. There's a satisfaction guarantee at the end. Thank you, Jake, for the satisfaction guarantee. I appreciate it. Now, tell me how I was supposed to determine that this would lead to where we are now. That is beside the point. I needed to pay Jake to make this legitimate. I sent Jake the first part of the money on July 1st. It was $100,000. And how I got this? Well, baby girl, I sold part of my channel to a company called Creative Juice that is partnered with Mr. Beast. And you know, Mr. Beast, like they're kind of distanced now from Mr. Beast. I really don't exactly know, but the SBA said no. Mr. Beast said yes. And I have to state how grateful I am for how much Creative Juice has helped me throughout all of this. They have my back genuinely, and they gave me the capital to get this ball rolling, and I'm so grateful of that. But it still wasn't enough scratch, all right? And I couldn't send him all of the money off the bat, or I wouldn't have had any money at all. And by the way, guys, trying to buy a house. How did I buy the house? Why didn't I just send him that money? I bought the current house that I'm living in by selling the house that I grew up in. I bought it from my parents in 2019. I renovated the shit out of it. I miss that place every single day, but you know, the baby must leave the nest or whatever the fuck they say. And I sold it to some schmuck from DC. No offense. There's a problem with the contract, and I moved out of my house in Plano, Texas, where I first moved on July 31st, 2021, and I moved to my parents' house, basically, near where I live now. I'm homeless, and I have 2 dogs or 3, I can't remember, and a girlfriend and my cousin Clint, baby girl. And we decided, instead of living in my parents' house, we just stay in the warehouse. So we lived in a fucking warehouse. We played games. You guys know how that went. It was terrible, very stressful. The list goes on for reasons to be stressed out. That's the point. I need to emphasize that consistently. I tell Jake I'm panicking. This needs to happen ASAP. House is closing next week. Spoiler alert, it didn't. It took an additional month. I had such bad luck finding loans that I was just consistently applying for that I was worried I'd have to divvy out ownership again to investors. And I just didn't want to risk anyone else's money because I knew I was being sort of reckless with this entire thing. And that's why I decided to sort of avoid that. I did talk to a couple people, but at the end of the day, I just decided to keep it in my own little circle to make it something that I had to deal with and my responsibility entirely, because I'm fine with losing a bank's money and my own money, but I genuinely could not imagine losing someone else's money. And then Jake makes an interesting excuse. He's asking me to make a decision on changing the build out of the machine. This is making it an extruder as opposed to an injection molding. But I already explained to him before this that we needed an extruder. Number 4 in this message, we are using alternative supply chains in some components as a part of our discounted proposal, so some items are coming from international suppliers. Our material lead time is roughly 45 to 60 days for everything, and manufacturing is 30-ish days, putting us at November delivery. And then some more ways to pay for the stuff. Because at this point, if he gets the stuff in November, we could launch in December, January, something like that. So the time frame for me paying for this contract in full is closing in. Jake talks about price hikes, increases, more price increases the 23rd. This is wild. You can have a 5% increase and then just days later, another 5% increase on all these individual parts that you're buying. That makes sense. That does make sense. When you're building something out of individual parts, it does make sense. And then I'm talking about sending money. He also obtained proposals from different candy equipment manufacturers from around the world and patted his own back, saying how much cheaper his was than all of theirs. I'd estimate with all discounts and sourcing we did to get the cost down that this production line would normally retail around $700K. Shit is absolutely whack. And as you can see, I responded to this with positivity. I showed an image of Squidward and SpongeBob to show that we are connected. And looking back at it, the frowns on the faces make more sense. Hindsight is 2020. I was predicting my future with this image. In late August, I sent Jake another $65,000 and $100,000 on different days, 2 days from one another. And all of that was from my business checking accounts. Why did I do that? because my personal checking accounts are frozen while you're closing on a home. They're not frozen, but it can cause problems if you spend money or open credit, etc. Getting excitement. Still no house, still very stressful, but still getting some excitement, all right? Fast forward a little bit, we are 11 days until closing. I'm trying to devise a plan. I offered Jake 10% of the company to see if he could help pull some strings and get this rolling faster. On the 17th of September, 2021, Jake says he has everything on order with down payments to all of his vendors. He's got a mechanical engineer finalizing everything, and he's got 2 contracted fab shops in Atlanta for some of the welding that is more precise that he doesn't want to do at his own shop. Cool. That sounds great to me. He needs to order a few pieces of auxiliary equipment, but the electronics and the PLC, conveyors, bulk materials, all that stuff, it's on order. He doesn't have a time frame for delivery yet. No projection. And it makes sense though. COVID, man. There's supply shortages. They've been fucking me over too, Jake. I understand, dude. I'm grateful at this same time Jake is ordering stuff in bulk because it drops the cost by as much as 20%. I'm happy he did that. A couple days go by, my house closes. I moved in, my channel gets a strike, and my channel is doing terrible, and peak panic mode is activated. Still to this day, by the way, I have no idea what that strike was for. Jake was worried about me. He said, yo, you good, dude? Haven't seen any vids for a hot minute. We were sending a $55,000 payment tomorrow to finalize the PLC and controller order out of California for your machine. I'm using our internal working capital. Just wanted to let you know that we are trying hard to get this moving for you. Dude, he's using his own working capital to help my dreams. This is great. This is great news. I still haven't sent him all the money, but I do very soon. It's only a month left until the entire thing's paid off. I want to make a small U-turn here, though. This is maybe a bombshell. I'm not exactly sure. On the 23rd of September, Jake said, there's a small chance one of my crypto portfolios might blow up to 1 million by the end of the year. Fingers crossed. Gonna reinvest it all into the biz when it does for working cap. He's talking about reinvesting it into his business for working capital to help with stuff. Last year, I liquidated 100% of all real stocks, futures, Forex, and options and dumped it into crypto, LMAO. At this point, I was slightly concerned. I'm gonna be honest. We'll move on. During this time, I'm sending Jake all of the money I have. My house is closed. Every cent that I'm making at the end of the month, I just send him. And Jake says that we can get the machine by December 1st if we expedite and get things really rolling. And by that, he means pay him. It makes sense. But what about the candy though? We still don't have the recipes for the candy at this point, and we were trying to figure it out, but it's difficult to make this kind of stuff without true quality confectionery equipment. Steam jacketed kettles, surface scraping heat exchangers. There's science to it. It is not rocket science, but it is more complicated than you'd believe. Jake understands though, and he feels sorry for me for still getting left on red by my lenders that I'm reaching out to. On October 4th, 2021, I sent Jake another $100,000. At this point, there's only 268 grand left from that contract, baby. Hell yeah. That week, I spoke to the lender that I used to finance my land, and they were interested in giving a loan for the equipment. A loan for $238,000, leaving just around 30 grand left. They said yes. I was ecstatic. The whole thing was good. It was a silver lining in a dark time. And baby boy Jake gave me some expectations for when the machine can launch. Your safe timeline for delivery plus startup, basically when you will be running the machine live, is currently early February. So for the purposes of planning with your current supplier and overall, that should be what you use. My absolute earliest target date is December 1st, but like I said before, that is a pipe dream, so don't hold me to it. Fine, I won't hold you to it. I understand, Jake. It's hard to determine these kinds of things. February it is. The money from my local bank, my friends, was wired to him. He was very excited. But Jake feels bad. Did you get a confirmation for your wire, Jake said. I said, let me ask. Might settle this morning. I didn't send him the address until after 5 Eastern Standard Time, I think. Jake said, no worries, bud. I just wanted to check in on it. I said, thanks, man. That's so much money. If I don't get paid this month, I'll go broke. I'm plumb out, aside from $20,000 in crypto. Sorry, $23,000 in crypto. This is not a lie. I was fucking broke, literally. And by the way, I'm not complaining. I understand how lucky I am, but I was being very, very dumb and taking a lot of risks. But I'm still young. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can make it all back. Jake feels bad for me, says, fucking hell. Hits me with a pretty cool emoji of a guy crying upside down. Not that I need to, but still feel bad siphoning your money like this. Fucking lender. Man, he's got a heart. That guy has a heart. Fucking lender. So the loan is approved. Jake still hasn't gotten the money yet. The previous wires were all out of pocket. One thing though, the bank needs a serial number to prevent fraud because they're they're betting on the equity of this machine to kind of counteract their risk of investment. For me and them, that's just how business works. It's how banks lend money. It's capital. So Jake goes ahead and makes a serial number. He says each piece of equipment will be serialized individually and also have a date code that reflects the day it was finished. The equipment is serial number 160.10-001. Jake receives the $238,000 payment from my bank. All that's left is 30 grand, which I paid out of pocket shortly after. Celebrate. Yay, guys. We got it. We got it. What a good end. What a good end to paying off the contract.
Fighting the desire, but also following the desire.
Hey, Jake, do you think there's a chance that I could maybe see my machine now that I've paid for it entirely? I'll see what I can come up with. We don't have enough pieces to assemble anything at my Jasper, Georgia shop yet. We're getting really close though. I have multiple fab shops assembling metal frames and other skids in order to speed everything up. A few days go by, Android sound, pics show up. Jake sends me these terrible photos. What is the excuse for these photos being terrible when he, is making this machine himself? Sorry for the shit tier quality. Here's all I've been able to get so far. Fab shop guys are all dinosaurs and basically have fucking flip phones. He's implying that they're old and they don't know how to use technology and they won't take pictures for him. Yet again, that does make sense. Have you ever been to a fab shop?
No!
I haven't. Just kidding, I have. They're all old. I actually know the person who took these photos, by the way, which is hilarious. It is at this point some uncertainty starts to build within my mind. I'm still completely just balls to the wall on this thing. I believe in it entirely, but we have some uncertainty, more specifically from Jake. There's no delivery date. We don't have anything, nothing at the warehouse, but they're ready and prepared to have stuff calibrated and powered up by mid to late December. With any luck, we'll be making candy before 2022, but the extruder is still not ready yet because of a tolerance issue that messed them up a couple weeks ago. So they're sorting that all out. I don't really know exactly. As of this point though, Jake projected we would safely have the whole line running in my warehouse by the 1st of February. Safely have it in my warehouse. And maybe even some of it running in my warehouse by the 15th of January. That's good. Little uncertainty, but we're good. Jake mentions expediting, which we talked about previously, and I agreed to have some of the stuff expedited. This incurred more of an expense, an additional $70,000. In my mind, I thought paying extra for expediting would just make sense and it would be better for me because expedite means to have something happen quicker, and the quicker I could have my machine, the quicker I could get it up and running. I had already hired Forrest, the COO of the company, and another person who shall not be named. Any update on the R&D machine? We got the candy samples. They taste excellent, but are nothing like the existing product, and I'm assuming because they're made differently. Sorry, man, I'm extremely behind. I'll work it up the first of the week. He didn't work it up for the first of the week, but to be fair, that's not in our contract. That's fine. No need for R&D equipment. And the candy was different because it was extruded, and it wasn't injection molded. In spite of that not being in the contract, it was still a weird delay. He just started to get behind. It seemed strange. It was a strange time between late November to basically the first part of 2022. Mine and Jake's communication became less frequent. Jake was MIA for days at a time. After I would message him on Discord, I would call him regularly still. By the way, this whole time I had been calling him, fairly consistently to communicate with him about certain stuff and ask him questions to just get info. With all the silence on Discord, I decided to just start texting him. My last DM to Jake that actually was involved with having responses from him was on the 9th of January, 2022. I DM'd him again in April, but I got left on red and I was texting him and calling. It's fine. We were still communicating, but not as much, and just on text. My team is big at this point. I'm ready to launch mid-Feb. I've got Forrest, my mom, Clint, a guy who can't be named, my dad, not to mention the entire team that helps me make YouTube videos. They're all paid as well. I started buying equipment. I started buying raw materials, flour, sugar, ingredients, flavors, dyes, etc. Not to mention the legal side of food production is incredibly expensive. You have to have lawyers, you've got to have FDA regs, you got to have inspectors, you have to do everything perfectly, which we do. And in order to get there, you have to pay a lot of money. But the part that cost the most money was, for me, specifically the scam part. This was really when I started to spend greatly in excess of what I was making, to the point where there were problems in terms of credit, things like that. No excuses. I brought this on myself, obviously, but buy the merch. And by the way, the expenses are still basically the same, and we're still managing to this day. No one has left on the team. It's been incredible. I cannot express my gratitude for my team more. When I think about it, it makes me feel emotional. And for me, that's like not a lot. I don't really feel emotional that much. Q1 of 2022 comms are sparse. We're working our asses off, and we assumed Jake was doing the same. On February 3rd, 2022 at 1:08 p.m., I sent Jake a quirky little message right after I finished a recording session where I was trying to buy a little Chinese truck. You know, those little small trucks? Well, I was looking on Alibaba, and guess what I found? A candy extruder machine. That's so weird. For $30,000? I sent this to Jake and said, how high quality you think I could make candy with this? Not very grammatically correct, and I followed it with an LMFAO. He said, holy shit, lol. Something tells me that's a flat out scam, crying laughing emoji. IDK how you'd be able to put together just an extruder for anywhere close to that cost. Oh, this is where it gets really bad, guys. This is where it gets really fucking bad. Early 2022, I want to know where my machine is. Comms are at an all-time low. Texts go unanswered. It's terrible communication skills from someone you're exchanging hundreds of thousands of dollars with. Personally, if someone had given me hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would feel indebted to them for the rest of my life. But alas, you can tell that this is not the case. I mean, dude, look at this. I assumed this was all just him being overworked and stressed, as he still provided updates occasionally, albeit sporadic, a little sporadic. I gave Jake some advice that I had taken myself, which is to relax and meditate. There's an app called Hypnobox. It's pretty cool. I even checked it and asked if he checked the app out. He never responded. But no worries, Caleb oompaville. All of these delays are supply chain problems, and everyone keeps screwing him over. In hindsight, it does seem weird that all of the problems that are falling on me are not his responsibility whatsoever. It's kind of strange. He tells me he's having a hard time with his business hemorrhaging money. I said, yeah, man, same boat, same boat. I'm literally bleeding out on the battlefield, like literally. Because when you get timelines for things to launch, you start to ramp up. At this point, I had hired people. I had bought materials. I had taken out loans. It's starting to come together, isn't it? On July 23rd, 2022, Jake gets sick for the first time. He's got pneumonia. Not good, man. I feel bad for him, obviously. Nobody can catch a break. I check in on him, ask him if he's feeling any better. I let him know that if it takes much longer, I'm gonna have to start laying people off, which thankfully I didn't have to do. But at the time, that was my only option until I, borrowed more money, obviously. I did everything to try to make this work. You guys have to understand, I did absolutely everything to get to the point where we are now. Like a lion coming from its den, we finally got a date to come pick up the machine in Georgia because Jake couldn't figure out how to get it shipped to us. He kept having problems with his freight companies and stuff. It's not good. I was excited. The future actually seemed bright for the first time in a long time. And by the way, how or why could we pick it up? Well, my dad has a hotshot rig, and my other cousin, Marcus, has a hotshot rig as well. They went out. They picked that bitch up. And everything is ready, dude. Still couldn't get any of the schematics or manuals or 3D models to study, which I really, really, really wanted and was fairly persistent about. And that would strike me as odd because, if you design something, you'd think you'd have blueprints or whatever. When asked about this, Jake says he's going to be brutally honest. And he follows this up by saying the servers were wiped, including backups with no possibility of recovery for all of his manuals and schematics and things like this. Guys, I'm getting goosebumps. This is crazy. This happened to me and I still can't believe it. It's very convenient. As soon as I start to put the hammer down, you get sick. As soon as I ask about manuals and press that, oh, they get wiped, dude. Weird. We'll look past all that for now, though, all right? My father and Forrest and Marcus go to Georgia and pick up the machine. Yes! I was very, very, very happy. This felt like a win for the first time in a long time. The machine is real. Jake is texting me. My dad and Forrest proved his existence in spite of him being delayed and coming down and flying down multiple times since we first signed contract in July of 2021. Next step, drive across the country 13 hours from Georgia to Tejas and bring that machine back. Once the machine is dropped off in the warehouse, it feels surreal, but it doesn't last very long. It's the actual beginning of the entire thing. I try to get more information from Jake on what we can do and what the soonest possible launch date is, and no response for any of this stuff, dude. I'm immeasurably stressed at this point because I have the machine, but I don't know what to do with it. I can't control any of this stuff. He just leaves me on red, leaves me on red, leaves me on the red. Just checking in, man. Checking in. He calls me back. I call him basically every day for weeks. By this point too, I have 6-month-old ingredients. A lot of them were lost to water damage. I've since bought new stuff. Jake keeps promising an update that will come soon, but there's no update. It doesn't come soon. As you can imagine, Jake has quite a few reasons for him having trouble getting things sorted out on his end. Things like legal troubles with one of his previous creations, as well as some undescribed family trouble back home. A lot of excuses, things that are just super dismissive of me, someone who's given him over $500,000. 600,000 at this point. You could tell me at this point it would be ready in 2025 and I would actually believe. The point is there's just a lot of excuses, a whole lot of excuses. And these things, as I'm being told them, I'm forced to believe them, because if I don't, then what? I got scammed. I don't want to believe that I got scammed. Like, that's my friends and family are getting suspicious. I'm getting suspicious, but I keep moving forward and stay positive and try to find the silver lining, literally just huff and copium. Fast forward to November 2022. I get a $130,000 request from Jake, along with a bill of materials, everything we need to get from point A to point B to launch the candy machine, to get everything up and running, to produce candy, to finally make my dream come true. Jake's having problems with working capital, etc. I check out his bill of materials. It looks good. I double check a lot of the prices. They're all good on McMaster, because I don't trust him at this point. I consult with my friends and family. I say, I can give this $130,000. I have the money. It's the last money that I have. This is the end, in my opinion. I think I should do this. What do you guys think? If there's any more ask of money, I'm not giving another cent. The finality of my intention was made very clear to everyone around me at that point. I wired the money November 23rd, 2022. The point in which I sent $130,000 is the climax of the story, because that was not included in the contract. That is well over budget. The expedite fee, there was a contract for that. I just figured we needed to get this done. $130,000, boom, it's over. Part of that $130,000 was to be able to buy and set up a boiler for the machine. And here it is, baby, the little sweet boiler. I have it still, but guess what? It's underpowered and can't run my machine. Didn't know this at the time, but found it out a little later. And then Jake gets sick a second time. We said to ourselves, of fucking course, he gets sick again right as I send him money. He sends me a picture of the little thing in the hospital just in case I don't believe him. So I believed him. My mom did not believe him. I didn't have a choice but to believe him. Hey man, take your time. If you're actually sick, I would be an evil person if I assumed that this person was lying about everything that they said to me. I don't think it's stupidity. I think it's just trying to be a good person and be understanding and empathetic of someone else's situation. We communicate a little bit through December, and he's got to get his lung drained. He has to get surgery on his lung. I'm not exactly sure if any of that happened, by the way, because here's a really important note. Jake claims that he was hospitalized for this lung problem or whatever, and then at some point says he has 10% lung capacity. So I have no idea if he actually got sick. I'm not saying he didn't, and I don't think anyone should assume the worst, but 10% lung capacity at the very least is an exaggeration. By the way, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if 10% lung capacity would get you an iron lung, but a study of 20 patients' lung function post-polio, the disease that put people into the iron lung, showed them having a function reduced to approximately 65% lung capacity when compared to a control group. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but if I use logic and reasoning, it seems unlikely. Another request for an update is met with more excuses in regard to surgery, okay? And this is the first mention of Will, by the way. We see Will is stepping into his role because we don't know if Jake can ever return to physical labor. So boom, we gotta get Will out there. And then, I know there's a saying, the final nail in the coffin. This is the first nail in the coffin. I saw this text, my heart dropped because I was like, oh, this is actually a scam. This is actually fraud. So, sweating bullets, Jake builds up the courage to ask me for a $60,000 loan. How? Well, he spent all of the money that I sent him at the end of November. I've put my entire life's work into this project, and this man is essentially taking it hostage at this point. So I make a decision and a commitment that I will give Jake no more money. And there's gotta be consequences for this type of unprofessional behavior. I tried to see how much of a scam this actually was, because I have to make it clear. I didn't know the machine was Chinesium. I just knew Jake was racketeering. He tries to garner sympathy with these texts. He sends me a list of stuff to buy. He tries to give me, an explanation as to how dire his situation is. I said, I can't help him because I have my own financial stress and I have no money. Then magically the next day, no worries. He figures it out, guys. Don't worry. We're good. Treading water a little bit here. I'm not giving Jake any more money. I just want Will to come. I want this thing. I want it bad. I want it to start. Some more delays though, but eventually Will does show up. And you guys kind of know if you watch the first part, this part of the story. So Will arrives, we kind of figure everything out. We find out the boiler doesn't work. The boiler that I spent 30 grand on, he said, but actually cost 16,000. By the way, I found where he bought it on eBay. And Jake wants me to send him an additional $35,000 now, not the $60K loan, $35,000 for 1 week of his time to tie up all his loose ends, to pay his mortgage, to get his rent, to just basically help him in his shortcomings and in his failures, because I'm desperate. I call him, I try to sweeten the deal. I say, what do you need me to do, man? What do you need me to do? By the way, I have no intention of giving him any money at this point. He says $35,000 for 1 week and probably an additional $35,000 for another week. The next day, I say, hey, Will, how come you and Jake don't know what the fuck's going on with this machine? Didn't you guys build this? And Will says, no. And Will shows me this. Attention, Mr. Jake Fullerton. This is an invoice for a company in China to build my machine, to buy my machine, whatever it is. $124,000 for the production line and $31,000 for the automated packaging machine, which I still don't have. Jake still has that. Plus $2,000 for belt rolling machines and $3,500 for a PP case. Don't know what that is. Total cost $160,500. And this was September 23rd, 2021. And it begins to all unravel, doesn't it, my friends? It starts to make a lot of sense. So I figure it out. I realize that we've been completely scammed. We have that moment with Will. I offer him a job. I say, hey man, you do know this is like a big deal. Like, this is bad. I've been lied to every step of the way. This is a massive case of fraud. Will had no idea. I genuinely believe that. By the way, I am extremely appreciative to Will for helping with all this. He could have gone directly back home to Georgia, but instead he decided to help do what was right and expose all this. He realized we had been lied to, and so was he. He was lied to as well. Call me naive, but I genuinely believe Will knew nothing of all of this. Jake is a compartmentalization, rationalization master of just dismissing things. Radio silence from Mr. Caleb Oompaville to Jake Fullerton of Fullerton Engineering out of Georgia. He knows that I know that he's cooked. He comes up with all these excuses, tries to figure out a way to sell his stuff, collateral. It's just a bunch of desperation. I decided to not speak to him for a little while to control my emotions, because I was very emotional at this point. I was extremely stressed and overwhelmed and angry, but also just completely hurt and destroyed. Because like I said, this is my baby. This is my baby. It's my dream. I've never stopped believing in it from the very moment of its inception. Looking back, I did absolutely everything I could. I put my best foot forward. I acted as positively as I possibly could. I tried to act with virtue, which is cringe, but I genuinely did.
The whipping winds of Zeldron.
So now, let's go ahead and expose the scam, shall we? Because this is where it gets really, 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 really good. We'll start kind of from the beginning again. We know that Jake bought the machine from China. He did not build it, even though he had pictures of it from fab shops around Georgia, taken by old dinosaurs with flip phones, or whatever he said. We know of hundreds of different lies at this point. It all comes crashing down. So many things are untrue. At the very least, we know he didn't build the machine. But when did the machine arrive in America? If it was built in China, the extruder alone weighs, 7,500 pounds. It's gonna take a little while for that thing to get here. Luckily, we have the import data. So this is a packing list from January 2022. I assume this means it's all still in China, right? So it wasn't even in the country until far after the quote unquote December, January, February. Like, it wasn't even possible. It was never possible to launch in December of 2021 or February in 2022. All lies from the very beginning. The thing was in the air. It was in the air or on a ship. It was probably on a ship. The thing was on a ship. It really doesn't even matter. At the end of the day, we know that everything was a lie. Every single thing. He lied to me. He lied about serial numbers for me taking out a loan with the bank. He lied to the bank. He defrauded the bank. He defrauded me. He defrauded everyone. It's complete and total, unrelenting, evil fraud. So we know it's a scam, but this still is not the end. It gets way worse, and there's threats and just blackmail. It's crazy. Jake finds out that Will showed me the receipt, and that's why I haven't responded at all. Jake gets extremely desperate. What about Will? What did Jake think of Will quitting and exposing this to me? He can't be happy. Well, he wasn't. He was upset enough to blackmail Will and also threaten him. Let's see how that went. So at one point, Will calls Jake because he said he was going to show up to his house, and he didn't want that to happen. And we've got a recording of the call. By the way, Georgia's single party consent state.
What was your last correspondence with Forrest?
What do you do for the company?
I'm the COO. I'd basically just help try to fulfill any dream that Caleb has.
But all that.
He was asking, where's the green for the extruder go? And I explained we landed a second separate ground, and the ground in the multi-conductor is actually the neutral.
Was it on the weekend?
No, 2:57 this afternoon.
Okay. All right. Have you told anybody at Off-Brand that you resigned?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right, cool.
He's trying to figure out why we're not talking to him and only talking to Will. The reason is because Will didn't lie and defraud us for years. Jake did. That's the reason we're only talking to Will.
I wish you would have called me last week or over the weekend or something, because I came up with the plan with Caleb. And part of that plan is I secured a dollar amount for pay for you, for back pay, overtime, as well as pay for the rest of the month in March. So now I got to go back to him and tell him
so
to
he
get that pay out.
He went forward with that deal?
No, we were restructuring the deal. So basically, I took out everything except for mortgage, rent, utilities, and pay.
This is the deal to have Jake come down for 2 weeks to the $35,000 a week, which I never intended to pay ever, because it was becoming very clear what was going on. And this is after Will quit and exposed everything, by the way.
The preliminary steps where I was like, okay, once this is done and you're making money, we're going to wind down. I'm going to dissolve Fullerton Engineering, and we're going to go 100%. Basically, we were going to become the engineering arm of his business.
I mentioned this as a possibility. If everything worked perfectly, if Jake came down and we had everything running with flying colors, I intended on doing this. I intended on acquiring his business and having him work for me to build these machines. But clearly, things were not what they seemed. This deal was never going to come to fruition.
Did you really tell Cody that you're going to show up at my house?
No, dude, I said that I just needed to talk with you about the things that I just did. Okay. I needed to know about the stuff you dropped off. I said he needs to call me back so I could hash out a couple of things, or I need to go talk to him at his house.
All right, because that's... You understand how that can, like, freak me the fuck out.
This call is right after Jake found out that Will quit and that I paid his back pay or something, but he didn't know that Will was working for me yet, and Will was back in Georgia, and Jake wanted to show up to his house to talk to him about something. He was getting desperate. He said he was going to come over there. He knew that the files were accessed. He knew that something was up. He knew that Will showed me the receipt, the invoice that blew the top off this entire thing. By the way, none of the deals were put together. He's completely lying. Do with that what you will. I assume he's probably telling the truth about showing up to Will's house, though. After that call, Will went and grabbed my PLC, a touchscreen controller for my cutting machine that was in our office, that was in our warehouse, that it wasn't there. We needed that thing to make it even run. Jake had it in his shop so he could reprogram it from Chinese to English. That's why it wasn't here, because it was still in Chinese. By the way, it's in my warehouse now. It's still in Chinese. And guess what, baby? We can read it. We memorize. Will brings back this piece of my machine that I own. Jake gets very, very, very angry. He finds out. He sends Will this message. Yo, read your NDA. If you're not gonna read it, you're digging yourself a really, really big hole. My warehouse camera system has worked since I moved in. My dirty little secret. I updated it to 10 terabytes last year, and it has everything from when I moved in. I got you on Saturday and Monday night, and you know what I'm talking about. You were logged into the Corp Gmail account on your devices, which happens to have forensic reporting on all action. Your contractual obligations under the NDA do not about your underlying reasons for why you breached. Doesn't matter if you are doing the right thing or if you quit. You cannot take company information in any form and divulge it to anyone. Newsflash. An NDA doesn't protect you from committing crimes. Are scams illegal? I don't even know at this point. You took company assets without authorization from the warehouse. Your reasoning behind this does not matter. They belong to me until either I authorize them to be delivered. My contract for the production line was between FE and Off-Brand, my company. The scope was deviated shortly after signed from injection mold to extrusion. I have the freedom and authority as a business to furnish equipment whatever way I see fit, and the methodology, documentation, and all elements related to that are confidential. True, but also you can't just lie about that. That's 100% fraud! Right now, I have you in breach for most of the NDA. If you would like to read it, go for it. You'll have ample time to see what you violated in the near future. I've gathered saved video from all the cameras of the shop. You can either continue to play dumb and wait for the police report for theft to be filed with video evidence, or contact me immediately and try to convince me otherwise. The NDA, in brief summary, prohibits you from... It prevents you from defrauding someone for hundreds of thousands of dollars is what it prevents you from doing. Just kidding, it doesn't. He lays out what Will breached, and by the way, this is complete and total nonsense. It's been months. There's been no legal action against Will, and any lawyer would absolutely laugh in Jake's face if they tried to do anything about this. Yes, I'm giving you an ultimatum. I know you hate it so much with how butthurt you got over me just trying to ask questions and simply mention to Cody I considered dropping by your house. This time, I have no interest in coming to your house myself. The choice is yours. Say nothing and wait for the imminent theft charges followed by whatever course of action I deem fit, or explain your dumb ass and convince me not to. The clock is ticking. Regards. Now, I'm no lawyer, but you can't hold pressing criminal charges against someone to make them do something. That's illegal, too. As well. Also, he didn't steal anything. He's helping someone who paid his payroll for years, and the backed up payroll that you didn't pay, Jake. Hey, dipshit, your ID, social, address, license plate number, and footage from all 4 cams of you stealing are being filed away in your criminal complaint tomorrow with PD. You catastrophically fucked up. My company was never gonna go anywhere, but I think you might truly be the most guy I've ever had to deal with. Of the year, crying laughing face emoji. I've always just been joking, but now I kind of feel bad because you're mentally handicapped. Oh my God, I just had an epiphany. You thought FE was actually going out of business. You took info I fed you on your trip to feed to Caleb. Literally, holy fuck, sub-zero IQ, you're actually brain dead. This is Jacob Fullerton admitting to Will that he fed info to Will to manipulate me even further to buy his company, and that it was going out of business. Are you telling me he didn't actually have any money problems? Oh my God, you mean all the money problems, all the loans I had to give, it wasn't actually real and he just admitted to it on text? No! Maybe William isn't of the year after all. Okay, so now you know about that. Let's circle back around to Jake's official statement, his incredible Twitter statement. 1, I did not know I was being labeled a scammer. Well, here you go. You're not being labeled a scammer. You are provably a scammer. 2, there was a lot of important info missing from the video. True. That is very true. I'll let you have that, but not from this video. 3, I did not receive or pocket $1 million, and every penny we received was put into the project. The first part of that is true. I did not send Jacob Fullerton $1 million. I sent Jake over $500,000. Okay. And I spent well over $1 million, closer to $3.5 million to get this entire thing going. And a lot of those expenses were just wasted based on timelines that were provided by Jacob Fullerton. 4, I was under the impression my help was no longer needed after the source of the equipment was leaked to Caleb. That is true. We don't want to involve ourselves with scammers. 5, I did not receive any further correspondence from anyone after it was leaked 5-ish months ago. That is also not true. Here's video footage of me and Forrest calling Jake to try to get some answers about the boiler. Plus, I did text him and send him this picture of us launching, which I was very proud of that moment. I wanted to share it with everyone. 6, I did not intentionally scam Caleb. So you unintentionally scammed Caleb. Is that the implication? Or what is, I don't understand what that means. What do you guys think? Comment down below. I worked with Chinese manufacturer directly to customize equipment because the cost to manufacture ourselves was too high. That is definitely true. I received it and worked 1+ year reverse engineering, redesigning controls, swapping cheap components with USA ones, etc. This is demonstrably false. First off, You didn't even have the machine for an entire year before we picked it up. There's proof of that from import tariffs, things like that. You did not have the machine. You purchased it in September of 2021. We picked it up in August of 2022. Lie. You reverse engineered it and redesigned controls. By that, you mean you just took the PLC, the touchscreen that was written in Chinese, that, by the way, if you customize it with the Chinese manufacturer, which we speak to, Nicole is her name, you can have them send you the machine in English. You don't have to redesign controls. They will do it for you for a small fee. You did not redesign any controls. You took off Chinese nameplates and put on ones in English that weren't even translated correctly. By the way, thank you, Nicole, for explaining this to us. You swapped cheap components with USA ones. He's implying he swapped out cheap Chinesium with American hard muscle. This is not true. The only thing that was swapped out on my equipment that came from China, I asked Nicole and I asked Will, who did all of the swapping, was breakers and transformers. You redesigned the electrical components of a machine. Do you know how much a breaker costs? People watching, sorry for getting aggressive. Not very much. They're very cheap. It doesn't cost money, really, to redesign the electrical system of something like this, to upgrade it from 300 VAC, 320, 380, 360, whatever China uses, to 480 VAC. Believe me. And also, we still had to fix some of the electrical wiring. It wasn't correct. Caleb was told that this was designed and built by us, which was a lie. Okay, that is an admittance to fraud, though not initially. That part doesn't matter. We did not receive $1 million, but a lesser amount, and didn't pocket any of it. The statement that you didn't pocket any of it, I find hard to believe, but let's see the excuse as to where the money went. It was put into the equipment, purchase new controls to replace Chinese ones, redesigning electricals, etc. Overhead, warehouse freight, rigging, machinists, etc. This stuff isn't cheap, and we paid above and beyond sticker price, the invoice price, $160,500 to manufacture to have this customized, then 3 times the cost of the equipment on new materials and making it decent. That is a complete and total, utter lie. $160,500 times 3 is a lot of money. I don't even care what that number is, but it doesn't cost that much money to upgrade wiring. It doesn't. Breakers, 20 bucks. A transformer. The transformer to power my entire building costs $3 grand. It costs maximum $10,000. Maximum. And you can have the Chinese manufacturer that you work so well with, you can have them do it for you for a small fee of like a couple grand and an additional wait of a few months. And there is no new materials, by the way. Nothing has changed on these machines. It's all quality stuff, surprisingly enough. In spite of it being Chinesium, it is good. But nothing was changed. We didn't just purchase it and send it. We spent a lot of time making it semi-decent. There is so much more to unpack here that I will put into a formal state that there is a huge misunderstanding here. There is not a huge misunderstanding. I never want to work with someone like this ever again in my entire life. And I'm grateful that this happened to me, and I'm grateful that I can expose it and make the best of it. And by the way, this happens all of the time. 1 out of 100 are going to be able to make it out of this and not have to file for bankruptcy. 1 out of 100. I am lucky enough to have this platform so I can make the absolute best of this and make this type of content. And I thank God that this didn't happen to anyone that I love. I did not simply scam Caleb out of a huge sum of money. I provided him equipment he thought was 100% USA custom made, but wasn't, then never finished the install and startup. That is true. That is, you know, when you really distill it down and you leave out all of the fraud and the criminal intent, that is absolutely true. Dude, all he did was overpromise and underdeliver, dude. What's the big deal, bro? I have no record of anyone trying to get in touch with me after Will quit and leaked the equipment source to Caleb. I would have given a statement if I knew the opportunity existed. Whatever I can do to make this right is #1 priority. I don't know if there is anything that can be done to make this right. My life has been skewed in a different direction because of this entire thing. I put everything into this. I was fully taken advantage of by Jacob Fullerton, and I am grateful to say that I no longer have to deal with this. We got it figured out. I have the most support I've ever had from you guys. I have a working machine that we've put, I mean, I can't even explain it. Hours and hours and hours, days, weeks of effort into retrofitting and fixing because it was a fucking piece of shit when it showed up. Not worth $160,000, let alone the amount that I paid for it. And I want to say that I'm grateful. Genuinely, I thank you guys. It's over. The scam is done. Okay, it's over, and no one will ever be scammed by Jacob Fullerton ever again, because you all know the truth. All right, I'm gonna have a PDF you guys can go look at with every single text, everything in regards to all this. If you want to check it all yourselves, I don't give a fuck. I have nothing to hide. I put my best foot forward. Jake has a lot to hide. Once again, do not dox, do not harass, do not intimidate. It is not worth any of that. It is just simply money, and we are all making the absolute best of it. And by the way, go to sour.gg and pre-order some fucking candy. I cannot believe that I just said that out loud. I literally feel emotions currently.